Welcome to DevOps Accents, a podcast on everything around DevOps, public cloud, and cloud-native topics, with your hosts, Pablo, Leo, and Kirill.
Hello and welcome. As usual, I am Leo and I have Pablo here with me today. Kirill is slacking off for very important reason and he is being replaced by our guest today, Gerrit Schumann. Hello, Gerrit. We are so happy to have you with us today.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Gerrit is the co-founder and CEO of mogenius, a tool for deploying and monitoring Kubernetes environments for developers. He is also an investor in several software projects. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Cool. But before we talk about how you, with such a wealth of experience, came to our field and set out to help developers deal with the complexities of Kubernetes, I want to remind our listeners on YouTube, especially, once again, that giving likes is not only very useful, but also very fun for us. So be generous and be sure to like and subscribe. And if this is your first time here, DevOps Accents is a podcast where we discuss what's going on in DevOps, cloud technologies, artificial intelligence, and the industry in general with our guests from different domains and different accents. Speaking of which, Gerrit, what is your accent?
What is my accent? So geographically, born and raised in Germany, spent a lot of time in the U.S., in Chicago and the West Coast, and always driven by technology and software teams and businesses. So it's a mix of geographies and, my businesses.
Basically, you've been picking up from different parts and from different industries that you've been communicating with?
So, I studied computer science. I worked as a software developer initially when I started my first company in the mid-90s. So it's been a while. It's scary to say sometimes. It was 30 years ago almost. And working as a developer founder at the same time, you obviously deal with the whole tech stack of not only developing, but running your web applications. I mean, for us, it was new territory at the time. And I've been investing in startups in the US and Germany. Mainly, I was focused on software. mogenius is my third company that I've started. And different industries. So that's different cultures. And there's definitely a pretty varied mix of experience in my CV, if you want to call it. And the one thing I did about 4 years ago, I managed a media company based in Düsseldorf. And a big project was their cloud native transformation and migrating to Kubernetes, among other things, and introducing DevOps. Actually, that was the first step. And that was my view of the not startup world from the more legacy business and modernizing that tech stack. So that was fun too.
As a person who've been basically on various side of development cycle, and the business growth and things like that. So you are the kind of person who witnessed how our technology shifted, how it changed and evolved through the years. And what made you realize, and I don't know, maybe not realize, but decide to stick to what you're doing today? Like, what was it like a decision to start working that, or do you think this was more like a necessity to address the current issues, or how you came to this conclusion?
So on a personal level, for me, it's a little bit back to the roots. After spending some time on more in the, I'm still more in the business side today. I'm not coding today, and that's and most of the grunt work. That's not in my lap. But I spent some time, on different business models and different industries, and I just kind of realized the last maybe 7-8 years that I missed the kind of like hands-on technology experience in the hands-on technology world. So it's a little bit of what's really driving my personal passion and what I love doing. And the second is that I first ran. I mean, first, let's say cloud services I came in touch with was like 2011 or 2010, 2011. And that was already a fascinating new world. And then about 8 years ago, we started working with Kubernetes, or 7 years ago. And I didn't think it was a necessity at the time. And then, working with and around that ecosystem, I realized, or we as a team realized, to be honest, this was a team effort. Realized it is a necessity. If as powerful and as beautiful as the cloud native world is, there are challenges and there are things evolving, and it's not a given in a decade old process, and of how you successfully run and monitor applications, for instance.
Yeah. And for the context of our discussion today that we have planned, you started mogenius. Could you please explain to us what you actually do and what you are trying to achieve with that for developers, for the DevOps teams, and who is the benefits most from what you're doing?
Yeah. So mogenius is a self-service platform to simplify Kubernetes and increase productivity for development teams. And we do this with a concept called workspaces. And development teams, DevOps, but especially developers, can work in these workspaces more efficiently and safely and within company policies, without breaking things, without a huge onboarding process. You're fairly quickly up to speed and are productive. So our goal is always to make Kubernetes as an operational task more intuitive and more efficient, so that every deployment, every troubleshooting action simply takes less time, and lets you get straight to the desired goal. A big part of that is managing complexity, and we do this with a granular role-based access control. So that's the first step with the workspaces. You determine who has access, who has the experience, and who has the need to see resources, for instance, see Kubernetes resources, and just by managing that, you reduce the complexity for what teams then monitor and observe. And the second step is that you then allow, also at an individual level, what is the level of actions and what are the level of insights and data you're actually allowed to access. So that's kind of like the first thing. So managing and organizing the complexity of all the resources that Kubernetes just has. And the more complex your infrastructure, the more complex your architecture, it become overwhelming for governance and in terms of just performing daily tasks. So let's say one developer you need access to logs, metrics, events. That's important for your daily job to find out, are my services healthy? Are they running? Is my test successful? Is there an issue? Do I have a failed deployment, a pod crash, or whatever it is? You need to get to the source of the. So that's one thing, one level. There might be some other developers like, okay, you're responsible for actually configuring deployments and manifests, and so allowing that to do, and in the process of doing that, so very granular access to selected resources and make that easy. So on the basis of as little as possible, as much as needed. And that's That's the first step. And we simplify that with our workspace concept. And teams for troubleshooting, monitoring, deployments, pipeline automation, up to secrets management. So everything that's around managing my net cloud native workloads.
I see. This is basically what you described is how developer experience was evolving, especially with the rise of Kubernetes and cloud native technologies. Do you think the concept itself has changed from what we started before to how it's now? Because now that Kubernetes is a central part of many tech stacks, there's been massive shift in DevOps priorities. For example, like developers need environment that support rapid iterations, while operations teams require more, I'd say, robust automation and infrastructure control. Do you think that organizations today have to balance these needs and potentially touch on tools or methods that they never used before in order to improve their workflows and DevOps to developers collaboration? Is it like a new thing that was not there before, or was it always like that, but on a different level?
Well, I think, the tool chain and everything around it is always catching up, right? I mean, you have in Kubernetes, with each version, with each capability that Kubernetes and the ecosystem develops, and then there's catch up. What can I, how can I then deal with and automate processes and catch up with my infrastructure as code, my scripting. So I think it's constantly evolving and changing. What I would say, though, is we think, we kind of live in a bubble, right? I mean, we if you look at, a fully automated, everything in place, it's perfectly managed. You have RBAC in place, you have your CI/CD pipelines are perfect, environments are, all configured automatically. You have infrastructure code for everything. So, that's definitely, we do see that. But the majority of where we see teams today are in a transformation stage where you have a selection of tools for very, I would say, particular issues or problems. Everybody has some sort of monitoring, or everybody has some sort of CI, CD pipeline and tooling. But even that is not a guarantee. So there's a huge number of teams that are still in the transformation stages, simply because of the team and their knowledge, expertise, but also the legacy that they have. So, if we look at the startup world and what's been created in the last 5 years, maybe not so big of an issue, but that's only a small percentage of all the workloads and all of the applications that are out there. So I would really differentiate between, in an ideal scenario, and we do see this, you have perfect platform best practices, everything is streamlined, you have self-services in place so that developers can perform crucial functions themselves. Monitoring is in place. Everything works smoothly. I have everything in a templating format stored in my Git. So, yeah, we do see that, but it's still the exception, I would say, and it's still matching that with a shared responsibility across the entire team. As I would say, it's still the exception. And obviously, what I said earlier, it's always a catch up. The more tooling there is, and there are more capabilities, obviously that increases, again, the complexity and the need to understand the tools. We just had a webinar on network policies on Kubernetes yesterday. We see a lot of our clients not using network policies. It's, not standard practice for them, or it's something, yeah, we need to do that, but it's a priority for later. Then you start using network policies and you realize, okay, there's a certain set of tooling that I need to understand, and there's some best practices or even experiences I have to make to in order to manage them properly, because it, again, becomes very complex when you apply them and when you actually realize there are some maybe contradictive policies. So it's all of these little decisions and little structural organizational things that add on to the complexity over time, plus the tooling, that we feel right now we're still in a very much of a complexity growth momentum, and it's definitely getting more complex today than it was 5 years ago.
And Gerrit, one question, because we have been traveling around this 2024 last year. So, and we have been in many events, all around the world. And we can be talking with many companies. And many of those companies, they have raising money, no? All of them, they are raising money because it's something that you discover these days that is something that is needed, no? Because in case that you want to grow in the way that is working the companies these days. And as far as I remember, when I was reading about your company, you already raised 2 or 3 times, I don't remember, or 1 or 2 or 3.
2 times, yeah.
2 times, yes, 2023 and 2024, if I remember properly. So how is that, because how is that needed for a company these days, because you are doing something very technical. So you are doing something that is, needed by many, many companies and these days, because Kubernetes is used by many, many companies. And not all of them, maybe because you don't need to use Kubernetes always, something that we always say to the companies, because there are many companies that with a simple, for example, Cloud Run, you can run a company. So there are different kind of companies that they need to use Kubernetes, other than that. But the question here is more, how is working this need to raise money? Because at the end, the problem is that there are many competitors. So in the world that we live, so we are always 2,000 of everything. So how is that need? How is that working for a company? A company like a SaaS, like you.
Yeah, I think it's quite natural. I mean, we're in an early stage of a market where, we're talking about internal developer platforms and solutions. And I remember this like 2 years ago, you go to a KubeCon or you go to any of the conferences, and I would say 9 out of 10 people didn't know what an IDP was. And the concept of platform engineering was not really in everybody's heads. So while we're building a solution that is tailored to the future, and also obviously what we're doing is we're like 20 years ago, most companies would build their own CRM system. There was not just a standard or like 20 different options. Today, if you think about platform engineering, you're thinking about a team that's building my internal platforms. And, the approach of, a internal developer platform that you can source from a vendor is a fairly, let's say, young idea. And we specialize on Kubernetes, which, by itself is complex and it takes time to cater to, most of the scenarios that the development teams deal with today. So it simply takes time if you want to do it right. And it takes some iterations. And like you said, we don't see, direct competitors necessarily. That's not really, what we're up against most of the time. We're up against partial solutions that people use today and just habits and, the urge to build themselves. And that's like the make or buy. We believe is going to change over time. The partial solution or partial tool issue is like, you can use as many tools as you'd like. We're addressing the need for reducing cognitive load for development groups that don't need the wealth of tools to manage every particular detail. It needs to be about the big picture and about managing and getting to what is relevant for you in a very efficient way. And so that works in tandem with existing solutions. So we don't see ourselves as a competitor to existing cloud native tools in the landscape. We see ourselves as an addition. That's the way platforms should be. You don't want to replace all your tooling. You want to find and streamline processes and collaboration and how you provision resources, how you access resources, and simply perform actions in a self-service manner. That's our goal. And, that on top of the Kubernetes tech stack. And of course, you can do it without venture capital or funding. It's a matter of how much, and how quick you want to be and how big the market opportunity is. You're absolutely right. So
I wonder, Pablo, if you could support this observation, because you are the person in our company who actually works hands-on with the teams when we work with them. And one of the let's say mundane tasks that we perform for our clients is analyzing and making audit for their infrastructure, figuring if it performs well, if it's cost effective, and we then create basically a document for the development and operations team, what needs to be addressed, and creating them steps, how to implement our recommendations and how to fix the observations. And then the most interesting part of the work starts when we have to work with these teams. And what we discovered is most of the times the team requests support with implementing those tasks, because the things that we discover are always, like, let's say, beyond their everyday understanding of the work and the workload and what they got used to do on their workplace, and they need basically another hand to help with that. And I wonder, Pablo, do you think this happens due to mismanagement in the companies, or is it really because the tooling that we are currently use is so complex that we just cannot, the companies, especially the younger companies, just can't keep up with changes, with the new environment and new tools that appear on the market?
There are no challenges that we couldn't overcome. Whether it is immediate infrastructure problems or planning a future project, we won't simply answer your questions. We become a part of your team to help you complete the mission. Our solutions consider the interests of your business and the combined expertise of the industry, as our staff is made up of more than a dozen experts in different areas who share decades of field-tested experience and knowledge with you.
I think that if you compare that with a restaurant and with a kitchen, you can see the sample. Because, for example, if you think, I don't know, an omelette, or you think something simple, in every restaurant you have an omelette, but not always the omelette is the same. And the omelette is the same because at the end it's eggs and some kind of fat. And the end you do the omelette, and the end the result could be different. And this is what happened with the companies. At the end you have an infra, and you have a number of services that you need to deploy. And in every company there is a different chef. So this chef is the one who tell to you how to do this omelette, and then he's telling in some cases, okay, I want to make an omelette that's all is basic omelette. Everything is going to be raw, and the water is going to be dry, so it's going to be a basic omelette. Or I want to do something fancy, and at the end, every company has a different manager, a different project manager, a different organization, and everyone is different. So, and everyone is doing in most of the cases. All of us, we are doing the same. What is different is not the infra, most of the cases. What is different is the software. For example, what Gerrit is doing in the company, what is different is this ability for them to create something, this new software that is able to do things, to do the magic. At the end, this is going to be set up in an infra that is going to be, imagine, Kubernetes. And now is, for example, when you're using Kubernetes, you can use what Gerrit was telling before, all the functionalities that Kubernetes offer to you, or you can say, okay, I only want to do my simple omelette, and then it's going to be like that, or I want to do something cool. And then when I do something cool, there will be more customers, or, when we move to the infra, maybe we reduce costs, or maybe we secure more the environment, or many other things. So I don't think that the people is not doing the things in the best way because, it's hard, it's difficult. There are many reasons. Some cases is because they don't have time to improve. In some other cases, they try to do the best, but the knowledge is limited. In some cases, there is no documentation. There are hundreds of cases, and even in many cases, you surprise and you say, wow, this is fantastic. What did you do here? Because I never saw that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think you see similar scenarios, but we're very different, causes for these scenarios, and I think a lot has to do with also mindset and the way the organization works today. But I think there's a direct link to is like, how do you, like, who makes a tool decision, and how is that tool, who develops an internal platform, for instance, and who's the key stakeholder? Oftentimes it's a collection of services, that are focused around DevOps. But then the adoption and development teams are not there. And the other way around is like, if you have a great developer experience, but the DevOps feel like it's not really, in my control. Like you said, you want a robust environment, you want some sort of control. So we find it's finding exactly that balance between you have a central responsibility for operations and for reliability and governance, and at the same time, you want to have a kind of like a lever, like, how can I drive autonomy? Because in the end, why autonomy? Why is that important? Because writing tickets and having long and intense feedback loops is not productive. That's what everyone's like. DevOps was saying, the developers, they don't know how to write a manifest. And then the developers like, I'm waiting too long for a response and need a new environment. And it goes back and forth. And that's also maybe because of the tooling, but it could also be solved with tooling, And but that's kind of like the what we've seen a lot is there's just a lot of things that slow down, these little iterative steps in running cloud native applications and solving issues that are solved with the back and forth, and we're trying to solve that. And the issues or the causes are very, very diverse. I would agree with Pablo there.
Speaking about extending the leash, I remember I've been reading one article at the Red Hat blog. It's an old article. I don't remember how the name of it. I will find it and put in the link in the description. But they've been talking about the concept of shift left initiatives, things like that, is when the developers have to integrate testing, CI/CD, and security measures earlier in the development cycle. But at the same time, it also leads to significant cognitive loads for them. And I've been wondering if this is still a thing, and whether like specialized roles are still valuable, or we keep shifting into increasing the responsibilities of developers, and if this increasing will continue and the responsibilities will continue expanding as infrastructure complexity grows.
I think, it's always a pendulum, probably. Shift left is important, and, you build it, you run it. So the responsibility of operating what you're building. I do think there's some remaining validity to that approach. And, that's one thing that I believe in. There are parts that you want to call it delegation, distributing. We live in a distributed system. We live in distributed responsibilities. You have to shift some of the responsibility end to end in order to see the full picture, to see ownership, to see also for the quality of products. So I do believe in that. At the same time, I do see for some parts of especially infrastructure where it might go too far. And you want a centralized, or you want a different responsibility, an ops team, SRE team that handles that part. I don't know if there'll ever be that right answer. I think it's shifting, but I do believe that one thing that has definitely happened is that the cognitive load for developers has increased if you do it without streamlining the workflows underneath it. So if you believe that, why wouldn't you enable developers to understand, how does a deployment work, and how can I fix my issues that I run into when I test my applications, for instance, or when I work in development, I want production-like environments. So I do want that operational capability, but it shouldn't be at the price of okay, I don't really want to deal with infrastructure. I don't know, and there's always like repetitive tasks that I do every couple of weeks and months, and then I forget, and it can become overwhelming. So it's to find that middle ground where you can delegate and you can have a collaborative approach that simply empowers them to solve their issues that are relevant for their development and testing cycles, but maybe not relevant to, I don't know if you need that for production, for instance, and you have a different process for production. But until you get there, there might be many, many things that make absolute sense for developers to be involved in.
Many people listen to us right now, and some of them are managers, and they are asking themselves right now what they can do in order to make it easier for the developers. How can they structure the work, or maybe hire new people? Because you can say, okay, if you don't understand Kubernetes right now, probably you are not skilled enough, and maybe you need to be replaced. Yes, and or maybe the correct answer would be, you are good at it, so do this. Another person good at something else, and they should do this. How managers should structure this, and how they need to set up their teams nowadays in order to make their teams perform well and not to be overloaded with tasks and knowledge that they probably don't need right now.
I mean, my answer to that. Normally, exactly what the manager would say. It's like, okay, I need more hands. I need to train. I need to onboard. I need to spend and invest time in developing the team. Our answer is a little different. Our answer is like invest in good policy and good documentation and infrastructure as code, whatever it helps you replicate and duplicate your work without reinvesting the time and going back to and having that initial work without economies of scale. And so invest in them. That's a platform. That's something. It could be a monetary investment. If you buy a vendor solution, it could be your internal platform team. And that I would consider, do you need to make every of your developer, for instance, a Kubernetes expert or a database expert or whatever? Probably, even if you said yes, it's a very hypothetical scenario. And so what's the alternative? Okay, then you have a bigger DevOps team supporting and managing the support desk, they become a help desk, and there's more support effort. Is that the right answer? Or do you invest in the platform? And always, there's never the same answer to that question. But I would encourage to look at beyond, more hands and increasing, investing in that, and try to streamline and invest more in the platform thought. That's what it's there for. Streamline and reduce cognitive load, enable self-services, and make service more replicable. Work for processes, I should say.
So basically, platform engineering is increasingly seen as a crucial element in managing developer workflows, and I know maybe even automating repetitive tasks for them. So how important do you think, I know it's important, but how can you put it for people so that we could understand it clearly, loud and clearly, how important the platform engineering is in enabling a better developer experience within cloud infrastructure?
If done right, a great developer experience will simply make your entire team more productive. The output will be better. You will save time and money. I mean, it's in the end, it's about that. Time to market for new products, for updates, patches, whatever you want to release. It will definitely also, reliability, or just disaster recovery, whatever it is. These are business metrics. I mean, we're not talking about, making people happy, and that's, a means to an end. It's about business goals. It's about being competitive, and also having an attractive work environment where I don't need to spend time with grunt work that I'm not familiar with, I feel uncomfortable with. People are not going to be satisfied. So that's one thing. It's talent acquisition, talent retention. It's time to market. Whatever DevOps KPI you do, whether it's time to recovery, whether it's lead time from development to production. All the metrics are there to be improved, and I think that's what platform engineering is, a wonderful concept for establishing that.
One question, Gerrit. More or less, I know that you are more than 30 years old. So, more or less, more than 30, let's say in this way. We can stop in this way. You have been working with, I had in mind, with monolithics at the beginning, this way to work with these big tools, that currently is still in place, okay? Then, that appeared something like a microservices, and then we start to add it even pipelines, because it was something that it wasn't there before. So, what I mean with this question is that we starting to move so on, adding new plugins in the way that the people was developing. Because at the end, everything is related to the people who develop. So all this infra and all these practice are always related to the developers, because infra team is there because they're developers, because they made something, and then the infra people is able to plug this tool or this code in these days in a container, these days in a function, in many places is able to replicate that. But my question is, what do you think that is going to be the future? And the future with all these new technologies that appear and all these new things, what do you think that is going to happen in the next 1, 5, and 10 years? Because when you start to imagine it, how can be the infra, how can be the way that the people they develop. So, and you start to think in the new themes that appear these days. So even just start to think, many conversations that we have with our guests is that, okay, maybe even there is no DevOps people, or the way that we develop is going to be different. Developers, I think always there will be. But I was talking more about the infra people. What do you think?
So if I if I have a utopian view, you could imagine a world where AI driven, everything can be handled more or less, with slight supervision. I mean, there's, data is available. There's more and more tasks. Probably you can automate a lot of that. You have everything is based more and more based on standards. You have IAC, so I think there's a case for what do I need DevOps for in the end. The reality, however, I think is you still have banks running mainframes in the basement. So I'm careful to say in 10 years we will get there. I think we will have AI driven assistance. Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're already seeing that today. It makes absolute sense. But we also see, we have competitors in the market. So whether it's, Microsoft Azure or AWS or GCP or any other, there are competitive forces, and that makes, there's a feature hunt, fox and a rabbit, and catching up. And not everything is the same. I mean, try to provision different virtual machines. I mean, it's all different flavor. There are so many nuances that I think even today it shouldn't be, but it is. It's a very nuanced world. And I see and then comes the business and says, I have, my business needs are changing, and I have, for strategic reasons, we need to be multi-cloud, we need to be more on-prem, and it changes, and it goes back and forth. And so I think that dynamic field is, we'll need DevOps for a very long time from now on, because a lot of the workloads and everything, what we do is in transformative state. It's not set and done and then it's iterative. It's still, I think we have fundamental shifts ahead of us. I mean, even if the usage of Kubernetes, yes, I see most companies are now working with Kubernetes, but of what percentage of their workloads are, and they're still deciding, what do I do with functions? What do I do with Kubernetes? What do I do with another abstracted service? Sometimes going back to, for this I just need a simple container host, whatever it is, but it's not static. So I think and I believe in the next 10 years, we will have still a lot of fun with changing infrastructure capabilities, platforms, tooling, possibilities. And then don't forget, we have policy. We have, whether it's information security, we have supply chain, whatever policy comes up, all this also has an impact on IT, on infrastructure, on development processes. And it's not, I don't think for the holistic process, it's going to be as simple as that, simplified utopian view that you can paint.
No, because for me, when you see, for example, when you're talking about DevOps guy, most of the cases, and I am a DevOps guy many years, most of the work that the DevOps guy is doing is trying to fix what another human mistake made or my own mistakes. This is 90 or 95% of the time. As a human, you fix problem of humans. Is part of the work. So and if you are able to have an input, because imagine that you have an input, you just don't need AI. Whatever input, even if it's code only. So you have an input that is able to tell, okay, I want to deploy that. It's up to you. This is not my problem. I don't want to be part of that. So most of the companies are going to buy that to you. What I mean is that, hey, do what you want. Imagine mogenius is able to take the input of the customer and tell, okay, I want you to deploy this tool. Now you're going to do in the best efficient way, cost reduction way. Always is going to be redundant. So I don't care. So it's another layer. So this thing is going to be buy for many customers, because then you reduce all these DevOps people solving errors of humans. For sure that it's like in AWS, Google Cloud, always there are people behind fixing problems of humans. But this is what I mean. It's not only AI. So it was most the idea of generating something simple.
Yeah, I would agree with that. At the same time, I would say most companies still want a level of control, and they would then say, but there should be no vendor lock-in, and it has to be cloud agnostic. And by the way, we need it needs to be this environment needs to be air gapped, whatever the requirement is. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we need to have a little bit more granular view on this than just like, okay, throw in your container and this is the resources that I need. That's for a lot of use cases, that's absolutely right. That should be sufficient. In the real world, we see transformative states from to, but also just the need to have different business needs translating to different infrastructure needs. And that's why I don't have a quite simplistic view. Like it could be done without DevOps today. And for the foreseeable future. But the thing is, though, most DevOps teams, we can't get to the strategic tasks and a level of automation and governance that we want because we're busy with support and managing tickets and just, like I said, fixing things. And that's going to change.
Yeah, for sure.
Change to what?
To more of, okay, what can I invest my time in, automating repetitive tasks, investing in replicable standards and templates and best practices, modernizing my tech stack, improving monitoring, troubleshooting for the entire teams, also security. I mean, this is always a topic, so really the strategically relevant IT topics and not the day-to-day tasks that could be automated.
Basically, this sounds like DevOps teams, DevOps guys. They are intermediary or a middleman between a proxy between the developer and the end user. And what we are trying to achieve is to reduce the role of DevOps in order to let developers do their best job, because in the end, they are the people who build the product, who build the project, and who create the new features. Is that correct? Is that what we are talking about, the creating a gap, widening a gap between developers and operations, reducing operations to tools?
I do see a widening gap because of the cloud native tool chain, which is simply more complex. So you have more, insular experts that specialize on this tool chain and this tech stack. And what I would envision and suggest is that you delegate responsibilities. That doesn't mean that you reduce the responsibilities necessarily, but you delegate tasks, and you can just simply enable and empower developers to do things that DevOps shouldn't be doing to begin with.
In the end, I think this creates us a picture of a better future. For the final note, there is a lot to discuss, right? So how we can implement these things, because I think our listeners, especially the developers, they have many questions, and their managers, they also would like to answer the question how they can recognize the moment when they need to make this shift and to understand that they have the problem, that the problem needs to be addressed. And I challenge them to talk to you more, Gerrit, about it, and for them, where they can find you and where they can talk to you about things like that, listen to you more, maybe your talks, you read about it from you, what would be the place where you can find it?
Yeah, I mean, mogenius.com is the first place to go to. You find a lot of documentation, and we have a lot of tutorials and blog articles on the subject. And you can also reach out to me directly. It's Gerrit, Gerit, at mogenius.com. Happy to have more conversations and any topic, DevOps and platform engineering, anytime, any place.
Great. Thank you so much. I think this is that's enough for today. We've been talking for quite some time already. I still have some questions remaining, and I think we will reserve it for another part of the discussion sometime in the future. You, those who listen to us, leave your comments in the comment sections if you have more questions. We will try to get them to Gerrit to answer. And don't forget to be subscribed. Don't forget to give us likes. And if you want more from us, the best way to get updates is to be subscribed to our bi-weekly newsletter, MKDev Dispatch, the link in the description. Make sure to be subscribed. And for you, Gerrit, thank you for coming. Thanks for sharing all this knowledge. It was very interesting.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
And for all of us, all of you guys, thanks for listening. And we will hear you and see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Do you think your project infrastructure is well set and maintained? We know for sure there is always room for improvement. If you are uncertain where to begin, let's first do an audit of what you already have. We will review your setup from every angle: performance, cost, security, high availability, and automation, and provide you with a detailed roadmap of which direction your infrastructure should go, generate concrete tasks for you to implement, or even take on your infra entirely, if you let us, of course.